Hello Paul, this is the test for your LS400 98 to 2000 1UZ-FE VVT-i to plug and play into an IS200. So we're just going to carry out all the testing of the harness. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to go through today, we're going to check that the immobilizer is removed, the drive-by wire is working, the ambient temp inside the car, the charge lights, the oil pressure light. Then we're going to check the reverse circuits working, the speed signal is going through to the dash. We'll show you how to do the flash code system. You do have OBD2 obviously, but we'll show you how to do the flash codes if you don't have an OBD2 machine to hand. We're going to go through and test the fuel pump relay via TechStream, the magnetic clutch for the air conditioning pump. We'll test the starter circuit as we actually crank it over and start it. And when we do that, we'll test the ACIS, which is this little valve over here. So what you'll see is as we start it up, boom, it's going to go down and close for you. Okay, so that's acoustic control induction system. I should have, or if not I will have, a video on exactly how that works, explaining in more detail. Then we're going to use TechStream to test oil control valves for the VVT-i system, and I'm going to go around each cylinder and pull the injectors out one by one to show that they're all firing correctly. Then we'll also look at the tacho signal, so that's in the dash itself, so we'll make sure that signal's coming through and working, and then the coolant temp as well. So as we test the engine is running, we'll see the coolant temperature actually go up. Alright, so we're going to do all of that. So first thing we've got to do is we've got our key in our half cut, and obviously we've got the security light flashing. So basically all I'm going to do is insert the key, and as soon as I insert the key you're going to see the security light go off to demonstrate the immobilizer is removed. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there, it stays off all the time. So we have removed the immobilizer, but I do still keep the security light, so if people walk past your car they'll still think you have an immobilizer in there. Okay, so now we switch the ignition on. We can see we've got check engine lights, we've got battery voltage through there, we've got our oil pressure and our battery charge light. So that's all of that done. And we're going to go through to our ambient temperature. Now this doesn't always come through. There you go, 19 degrees. There you go. So that works inside the car, and that is actually measured. So it's 19 degrees in the workshop today. Okay. So we've done charge light, we've done oil pressure. Now we'll go to the drive-by wire. So we've got our engine here. Now we do obviously have the air pipe and everything on, so we've got the MAF in. So I'm just going to turn the throttle and you'll actually hear the motor come to life. There you go. So you should be able to hear that working. We will obviously rev it up when the engine is started so you can hear that as well. Alright, so now we're going to move on and we're going to look at our reverse and our speed. So I'm just going to turn the cluster to face us there. So all we're going to do now is we've got our reverse plug here as part of the gearbox harness, and I'm essentially just going to bridge it together, and as I do, so I've just bridged it together, which is what your gearbox does, and you can actually hear the beeping. There you go. So happy with that. Okay, so moving on to the speed. So we've got our speed sensor plug here as part of the gearbox harness. You'll see it all comes down here and out the back here. Okay. So I've got a little device that we use to correct tacho signals, but luckily also we have a little test function on there, so we can generate a signal from this device, and that'll then tell us whether the speed sensor is working. So I'm just going to put it into test mode. Okay. And so we also test this because we've got power and ground. So as part of your speed sensor plug, you've got 3 wires, which is basically power, ground, and signal. So this tells us that the power and ground are working as they should do. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to feed that signal into the cluster, and you'll see that we now have speed showing on the dash. Alright, so we're happy with that. We know that all works. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to the flash codes. Okay, so on the IS200, depending on what year you have, so if it's pre-2001, you actually have this diagnostic port, which is in front of this little fuse box, which is next to the ECU box. Okay, if it's post 2001, you have just the OBD2 port. So you have the OBD2 port on both vehicles, but on pre 2001 you have this port in the engine bay, and you have the diagnostic port in your driver's footwell. So you see my OBD2 machine is actually plugged into here, onto the OBD2 port. So that's all good. Okay, so effectively, if you want to read codes, all you've basically got to do is you come inside here, and then you'll see that there's E1, which is sort of in the top there, which is where this wire is, and then there's TC. Okay, and TC is this little one here. So you see you've got these 3 terminals here, 1, 2, and then 3 in the middle. So effectively all I'm going to do now is, if you look at the dash, you'll see we've got the check engine light on, and as soon as I touch that, it goes off and it'll start to read codes for you. So you've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 27. Okay, so that's how you do it. You basically group them together. So 2 flash pause, 7 flash pause, that's 27. Then the next one you'd get is 29, because 27 and 29 are sub-oxygen sensors, and I'll show you the codes on the diagnostic machine as well, which is what we're going to do next. So obviously I've had this on already. So what we'll do now is we'll just go into here. Okay. All right, so I'm already in the system. So I'm just going to go into system select, just so that you can see it's picking up as LS400. Okay. So we're going to go into engine and ECT mode. All right, okay, so the test we want to carry out now is obviously the fuel pump. So what we're going to do now is we'll go into active test. Okay, and we're going to do fuel pump. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm effectively going to activate the fuel pump via the ECU. And as you can hear, that the fuel pump's running, and you probably heard the relay click over there. So now I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so regarding the fuel pump, the standard Lexus system does not prime the fuel pump. I do have a video on fuel pumps, how they work, how they're wired, etc. In your case, the fuel pump is controlled by the ECU, so it will only work when you crank the car, and it'll work as long as it continues to get an RPM signal from the crank sensor. So those are the only 2 situations that your fuel pump are going to work. So don't be surprised if it doesn't prime. Your standard IS200 was exactly the same. It didn't prime the fuel pump, so don't stress about that at all. Okay, so next one we're going to do is the AC clutch. So we're going to go to the AC magnetic clutch. And as I press that button, there's literally only going to hear the relay clicking. So I'm going to move the camera over there. Okay. Right, fantastic. Okay, so that's the AC clutch. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move over to actually starting the engine now. And that's going to involve us physically being able to test all the things like the starter circuit, the ACIS, the oil control valve. We'll go through each cylinder and remove the injectors to make sure they're firing. We'll check that the tacho's working over there, and then obviously the coolant temp. Now the coolant temp is already actually a little teeny bit off of the needle. Okay. But obviously as we run it along, hopefully it'll heat up enough and we'll start to see that coolant actually move along. So when I do this, obviously the GoPro will sort of block out the noise a little bit, but it is going to be quite noisy. So as it's plug and play, obviously everything is just plugged into your ECU box there. So on 3 we're going to start it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's it all running now. So we're happy with the starter circuit. So we can see the ACIS has now come down, so we're happy with that. Okay, so now we're going to test the oil control valves. Right, so what it's going to do is it's going to, as you can read on there, it's going to change the VVT-i, and it's going to make the engine sound terrible. So as soon as I do it, okay, so we're happy with bank 1. So we're going to go to bank 2. So we're happy with that. We can see that we've got RPM showing on the dash. Coolant temp is starting to rise ever so slightly. But now we're going to go through each cylinder and make sure it is firing. So we're going to go here. our coolant temp is rising, so that's all good as well. So we've seen the tacho work, and we've seen the coolant temp work, and we've seen that work. And we'll give it a little bit of a rev. Okay, well, that was loud. Right, okay, so happy with all the tests that we've done. So everything should be really straightforward on your side. Most of the wiring in terms of the way that the spark plug does go, you know, which connector goes to which one is dictated to where it comes out of the harness, so that should be relatively straightforward. This coil plug over here normally comes out of this one. I've moved it over to this one to make it easier for you to determine that this is obviously coming to this coil over here. So that's all relatively straightforward. There's all your cam sensor plugs. You've got all your injector plugs here. You've got your ACIS connector, which comes out here. You've got your two earth straps, which come out the engine block there. You've got your sub harness, which you've still got hopefully on your engine, which comes out here and plugs into here. And that forms part of your starter harness, which is this big thick cable that comes over here. In our case, is obviously attached to the positive of the battery terminal. And then you've got your alternator cable, which goes into your fuse box here directly. You'll see mine's just running along underneath into the alternator, which I'll go on the other side in a minute. Okay. Then we've got your oil control valves at the front here. You've got your pedal position sensor, which actually comes across the top here like this, from this side over here. There's your TPS connector over there. And then you've got your drive-by-wire connector in the front. And then coming down here, obviously you've got your alternator connector here. You've got your low oil level connector. Now, normally on a front sump on an LS400, the oil level sensors here. On an LS mid sump, it's all the way on the other side. You've got your lambda sensor right here. And then you've got your MAF coming all the way up here. Now, we're obviously using a 3UZ MAF, so I've just wired it around. You'll have the, what I call it, the bullet style one that goes into a big holder over here. Okay. And then coming down the front here, you've obviously got your cam sensor, which has a little clip over there. Then it comes down there and it actually goes through this little hole here. Sorry, I haven't put it through the little hole because it's just more convenient to take it out. But you've got your crank sensor down at the bottom here. Your oil switch, which I've got over here, would actually be at the back over here. Different oil filter housing. And then you've got your AC plug, which will plug into your AC compressor. If you're not using the AC compressor, just tuck this out of the way. We just fit it on a standard with these because the aircon does work. So if you ever want to use the aircon, it's all wired up. All you just got to do is plumb it up inside the car. Okay. And so I've already been through your TPS and everything here, your oil control valve there. Okay. So that's pretty much what you've got to do on your side. Fit the engine down, get it on there. Oh, and make sure you've got an earth on the block. So on the IS200, you've got your big thick earth cable that comes from the terminal here, goes underneath the battery, bolts down underneath there to the chassis, and then comes down here, and you can actually see it over there. It comes down there, and then you can bolt it onto the block on this side over here. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. So you've got alternator plug going to your fuse box. You've got main thick starter cable going to your positive terminal of your battery. You've got the earth going to the block. And normally what I would do is on the IS200, you have this little earth strap here. I'll just go grab an earth strap, not a massive one, just like the standard one that came on the IS200, and bring it down to the cylinder heads. And you've got plenty of holes on this side. And then you've also got M6 holes at the top here that are unused on your 1UZ VVT-i that you can then use to attach that on. But that's pretty much it. Nothing really spectacular to do. Your fuel system, you can either have this pipe that's come standard on the engine, sort of cut and sort of extended down to the bottom, and then there's special fittings that you can change the metal line underneath there to fit a rubber hose on, or you can get an Altezza line, which is obviously much longer. If you guys want that, let me know. I'll put the part number down, so you can probably buy that from Toyota still, hopefully. And then the only other things that we would recommend that you do to the motor is things like changing the coolant temp sensor and so on. These are just all old parts that get done, and clean your throttle body. I do have a video. If you scroll through, you'll see how to thoroughly clean your throttle body. So I'm not going to go into detail there. Find that video, have a quick look through there. All right, and then in terms of your mass airflow sensor, I have another video explaining about how to fit the mass airflow sensor, do's and don'ts. So again, quickly have a browse through. You'll see what to do there. So again, I'm not going to go into too much massive detail. Okay, so that is pretty much it. There's nothing else that I can really think of for you to change. What I will do though, the next video I'm actually going to do is to show you guys how to check timing electronically with a timing light. So if you've wondered why my timing light is here, that is the reason why. So Paul, this is all done for you. We'll get it all done. We'll do the video, send it up to you so you have this for your reference. There's really not much else to do. Strap it on, plug it all in. So as you can see, it's all just straight plug in. There's your gray, your black, and your blue. There's your two plugs that are already left behind in the car, straight into this resin patch we do. Plug in your ECU. You've got now the grommets to slide into the box here, and you've got your device to take care of all the gauges. And as we can see, everything works absolutely fine. All right, but that's all, Paul, and we'll get this in the box and on its way to you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.